everybody for coming. I appreciate you allowing me some time to talk to you about what's going on at the hospital and some of the issues surrounding the upcoming ballot, the levy that we have on the ballot. The first thing I want to do, which is something I've been doing at all of these meetings, is say that I apologize that I have to be here tonight. If it was up to me, I would prefer not to be. But we've made some mistakes, and we're attempting to do the right thing from this point forward. But because of some of the mistakes that we've made, we need to fill a pretty big hole that has been generated. At a lot of the meetings that I've been going to, the issue generally starts to go back to, well, who's to blame? And I want to tell you that that's not why I'm here. It's my opinion that blame has never solved a problem in the history of the world. So I don't intend to attempt to blame anybody for anything that's gone on in the past. My job is to go from here and to try and keep this hospital alive and try and make it prosper. And that's why the board asked me to come to Superior and to Mineral County, is to try and help make the facility a viable organization. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is there's a couple of misconceptions out there. Number one, this is a 2-year levy. It is not an ongoing levy. It does not continue. The only way that any levy goes past the timeline that's set for it is based on approval of the voters. So this is a 2-year levy for a total of $498,000 for each of the 2 years. So it doesn't go past that. This levy is again generates $498,000 for each of the years. That's 49 mills. And that converts into $64.09 per $100,000 of value of a piece of property. That is $10 or $5.34 a month, or 17 cents a day. For a $200,000 home, that is $128.18 a month. While I recognize that that's more tax money, it's something that we feel is really necessary in order to turn around the facility. So the next thing I want to do is talk a little bit about what happens if the hospital is not here in Mineral County. Losing the hospital would add a minimum of an hour each direction to a healthcare facility. And that time can really mean some serious problems for the people who need the care. For stroke victims, there's an old saying that time is brain. And if you have a stroke and you're not able to get to those blood clot busting drugs, you're going to have a high possibility of being disabled or worse. Same issue with cardiac problems. We need to be able to take care of people as quickly as possible in those types of incidents. For trauma, everybody knows what goes on out on this freeway. We take care of a lot of trauma victims, and we stabilize people, and we get them turned around to facilities if necessary in Missoula. And without that stabilization treatment, we've got some major problems for the people that are transferred. Our pathologist physician who comes and does the supervision of laboratory. I was talking to her when she was in town the other day, and she said that the physicians in Missoula are very concerned about the loss of the facility here in Mineral County. It means a lot worse patients showing up in Missoula, worse level of care required if they show up in Missoula without that stabilizing treatment. So those kinds of things are a major problem for the patients. Another issue is EMS, emergency medical services. Right now, all across the state of Montana, in a lot of rural areas, we have a huge problem with recruiting emergency medical system staff. It's very difficult to recruit younger people into that role. If you go to some of the EMS meetings, you're going to see a lot of this color hair at those meetings. If we add 2 hours to a transport, it's going to be even more difficult to get people to sign up for those roles as EMS people. We want to recruit younger people into those roles, and it will be very difficult to do. From the economic perspective, for the year ended June 30th, 2014, Mineral Community Hospital paid out $3.9 million worth of salaries and benefits in this community. That's an enormous amount of impact on the economy. Through January 31st, it was about $2.2 million worth of salaries and benefits. That's for the first 7 months of our fiscal year. So you can see that it's got a major impact on the county, and that county businesses would be very heavily impacted if the hospital were not to survive in this county. If the hospital were to close, right now there are a little over 90 people employed by Mineral Community Hospital. We are about 71 full-time equivalents. That means if you took all the people, full-time and part-time people that work for us, and boiled it down into full-time jobs, there's about 71 full-time jobs that are spread over more than 90 people. If those people were to lose their jobs, that would have a big impact on housing prices in Mineral County and property values in Mineral County. As all of you know, Mineral County and Sanders County are 2 of the highest unemployment counties in the state of Montana. So it's very difficult to absorb that many jobs back into an economy that already has really high unemployment. In addition, when people are moving into a community, there's a lot of things that they look for. John was talking about some people who moved into the community, and they had 3 things that they needed. Number 1 is good fishing, and I understand that. That's got to be number 1. Number 2 was they wanted an airport because the husband flies. And number 3, they wanted a hospital because the emergency room is very, very important to people. If there's not that emergency room, that hospital in a community, it's very difficult to attract new people into a community. And if people aren't attracted in the community and there's people moving out, again, property values are definitely going to be impacted. The schools are also impacted. Right now, there are 44 children who are kids of people who work at the hospital. So without those 44 kids in the schools in Mineral County, that's another big impact on our local economy. One of the things that I think is something that our people are not aware of is that the hospital is operated by two different entities. There's a hospital district, which is part of Mineral County, and then there's a nonprofit corporation that actually runs the hospital. The hospital district owns all of the assets and therefore holds all of the debt of the hospital. So if the hospital nonprofit corporation were to cease operating, the county still has all of that debt on its books and still has to find a way to pay off that debt. So the debt does not go away if the hospital operation stops. And I think that's something that a lot of people were not aware of when we first started talking about this issue. A few years back, the hospital signed an agreement to implement an electronic medical record system. There was a law passed in 2009. It was the 2009 stimulus bill. And when it passed, it required every hospital in the country to implement electronic medical records. I think that the law was very poorly thought out because part of the goal of that law was to make electronic medical records interoperable between different organizations, so that if we had a patient in our facility that needed to go to Missoula, those records were available electronically. But there are so many different systems out there, so many different ways of gathering the information, that sharing of that electronic information is just not happening. And I personally think it's many years away. However, that didn't change the fact that the stimulus bill requires electronic medical records to be implemented. So we purchased a system called NextGen, and we paid about $750,000 for this system. It was, in my opinion, not what we should have done, but I can't go back and remake that decision. So we have the NextGen system, and we will have it because of the way the contract we have is written. We will have it at a minimum through 2018. So we are working with that NextGen system. I believe we have turned the corner on NextGen. We are, after a full year of having NextGen in place, I think our medical providers are having a much better understanding and getting a lot better education on how the system works. So I think we're getting a handle on the NextGen system, and for the first time since March last year, when we finally implemented it, we will be closing the month of March of 2015 with all of our charges for the month of March actually in the month of March. So we will be able to get bills out more quickly. We will be able to process claims to insurance companies more quickly, and hopefully that issue is being resolved. However, we still have $600,000 we owe on this electronic medical record system. With all of the problems that we had with implementation, we lost a lot of revenue that we're not going to get back. We had a lot of struggles with staff acceptance of the EHR system, with training from NextGen, and just with NextGen not really working for us. And over that period of time, as amounts get older and older, insurance companies and individuals are less and less willing to pay on those amounts of charges. So last year we wrote off about $1 million worth of bad debts out of our systems. Again, the NextGen system bill is not going away. That's one of the reasons we need this levy money, is to help us pay off the electronic medical record system that we're required to have. In addition to that, we have a credit line with a local bank that is $560,000. That credit line was taken out as kind of a bridge between implementation and collection of accounts receivable once we had this new system up and running. And we are not going to be able to collect enough money from those ODR to pay off that credit line. So that's the other issue that's staring us in the face, that we really need to collect dollars in order to pay off. The bank was very kind and renewed our credit line last December for another year, which is great. But I don't know if they called it today. I don't know how we don't have the money to pay it off. So that's the other big amount that needs to be addressed with the levy dollars. What we have vowed to do, and if you read the levy language, the ballot language itself, it says that we are requesting this money to pay past accumulated debt. It is not to pay for anything new. It is not to pay for salaries for staff. It's not to pay for anything else other than the debts that we've already accumulated. So the board, should the levy pass, the board will be setting up a specific account, and every dime from the collection of this 49 mills will go into that account and be used only for payment of previous debt. We decided that we needed to make that pledge to the community so they would know exactly where these dollars were going. Levy dates. This ballot for the hospital levy is a 100% mail-out ballot. It is will be mailed either April 10th or the 13th. So it will be received sometime that next week. It must be returned. There will be no polling places. I don't believe in this county either, or in this part of the county either, will be any polling places open. So it will need to be sent back via mail or delivered to the county courthouse. They have to actually receive the ballot by May 5th. If they don't receive the ballot by May 5th, your vote will not count. We are encouraging people, regardless of their perspective, to get registered to vote, if you are not, and to vote. I suspect that the people in this room, since you are here, you are like voters. So I appreciate you coming, and one more time, I just want to say, I apologize that we've made some mistakes, but I would very much appreciate your support in passing this levy. It's something that we really need to get through in order to keep this hospital in operations. So, with that, I'm going to open the floor and let people ask questions. Everybody knows John Woodland. John is the chair of our hospital board. And if I can't answer a question, hopefully John can.
And I'll just want to real quick correct one misspoke that Ron made. When he talked about the $200,000 house, he said $128,000 a month. It's $128 a year. He said $128 a month. It's $128 a year. So make sure that gets corrected. With that, we'll take questions.
I've given this talk like half a dozen times now, and I can't even hear myself talking anymore. It's just so. Any questions? Yes, sir.
My name is Rick Casper, and I've lived in Mineral County for about 60 years. I went to high school in Superior.
Okay.
And I remember when the hospital was built. In fact, my oldest son was born in the old hospital, Dr. Gerson. And I remember that when it was built, they borrowed $50,000 from the county commissioners, I'm sure that it's still in there. Part of the problem that I see with the hospital, and I have nothing against, I absolutely believe that we need an emergency care unit. I believe that we need an old folks home. I believe that we need to have the assisted living. But as to whether we can afford to have a full-staff hospital, I wonder. I have a good friend, his father, if you'll take a look, when you go into the hospital, I have his picture right there in front, Dr. Doyle. And when I talked to him, he said it is ridiculous to have a full-staff hospital in Superior. We can't afford it. You need to have a county 3 times to 4 times as large as this if you're going to support a hospital. The other thing, too, that I wonder about, I heard you talk about how long it takes to get to the hospital. If I live in Alberton, I'll be in St. Pat before I'll be in Superior.
I understand.
If I live in St. Regis, I can be in Plains within 15 minutes of being in Superior. If I live in the West End, I can be in Wallace faster than I can be in Superior. So who,
Wallace does not have a hospital.
Kellogg, so who are we really supporting by this hospital? The town of Superior, is that not correct?
That's not correct.
Oh, how is that not correct?
That's not correct because that 15 minutes, which is actually not the case, but that 15 minutes to get to Plains can be the difference between life and death for people. And if that hospital, if the hospital is not here in Mineral County, it can and will be there.
Well, what about an emergency care unit?
An emergency room is part of a critical access hospital. We have to have a hospital to have an emergency.
Well, and how many units do you have to have in order to run that hospital?
Unit.
2 units be enough?
What do you mean units?
2 beds?
We have 3 beds, and that's all the emergency room that we have.
But my point is, how much of this is really directed at the economic input to Superior to keep it valid? If you were to move it and all of a sudden the people start to go to Missoula to see their practitioner, and all of a sudden, well, I'm here, let's go to Costco and I'll buy my stuff, let's go to Walmart and we'll pick up. Well, I'll get a script, why don't we go to CVS if we can get it there cheaper, we can go to Walmart. So what happens there? Then the economic input starts to affect the town. That's one of the reasons why it is important for the different businesses in Superior to keep that hospital there. Whether we can afford it or not is immaterial. It adds to the economic input to the community that keeps that going. And that's one of the big reasons. So what you're asking to a certain extent is for these outlying communities to provide help to keep the town of Superior going. Because they feel if they lose the hospital, they've lost business and perhaps things aren't going to go as well. And I think that's one of the big reasons why there is so much input from the businesses in Superior and the Superior community itself supporting the hospital and the funding.
I'd like to respond to a couple of points.
Sure.
First one is that a county of 4,000 can't support a hospital. That's simply not true. I came from a county of 2,500 people, and the hospital was thriving. And so not just surviving, but thriving. And we have a clinic with 4 providers and 8,000 clinic visits plus a year. We were able to not just keep the doors open, but we did get to receive a tax levy as well. We were able to reduce the tax levy that we got from the community, take the tax money, put it 100% into a fund depreciation account, and only use it for replacement of assets. The hospital was working great in that community, and it was 1,500 people less than this one.
But would you also admit, though, that the people who live in Alberton probably have just as much of an easier time
True, and I just looked at the last vote that happened. The most supportive community in the entire county was Alberton. By far. I mean, it wasn't even close. Alberton was 80% positive for the last 7 days. So they understand the impact on the county of losing the hospital in Middle County.
Even though it's not needed for their community.
Well, there's another piece of that that I think we're not talking about right now. Ron mentioned that $4 million worth of salaries. They aren't all the people who live in Superior. There are a number of employees who work for the hospital who live in Alberton. There are employees who work for the hospital who live in St. Regis.
But you also tried to start a clinic here in St. Regis, and there was so much opposition to the thing because it was pulling business away from Superior that was one of the reasons that it was closed. Not the only reason, but one.
The reason it was closed is because it wasn't financially viable. It should have never been built to begin with.
Well, who was in charge then if it wasn't, that was putting out the order to build it? I mean, apparently somebody knows how to run a hospital wasn't have been saying, oh, you need to have this clinic.
It should have never been built.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
Yeah, with there was $300,000 spent to construct that building, and it never from day one had enough people coming to that facility, even remotely paid, even the building costs, let alone all the staffing costs that it cost to operate it. It should have never been built. Yes,
How
ma'am.
much debt is left on the clinic that's sitting here empty?
There is currently about $108,000 of money that's owed to Blackfoot Telephone Cooperative. The hospital borrowed $75,000 of its own money to construct it, and there was a $75,000 grant that was put into place. Until the healthcare services were stopped, the local taxing district, what's it called?
It was a resort board.
Resort Board was making the $1,200 a month loan payments. They have not been making those payments since healthcare stopped here. So, yes?
How can you assure us that the problems have been solved and the money is not just going to go down the rabbit hole like the rest of it?
Well, I have been telling other people you don't know me from Adam. I grew up in Ronan. I came over here as a kid to hunt because I couldn't hunt in the mountains near Ronan. I didn't come here to let this hospital fail. That was not why I came here. We are filling the holes. I've got some things that I am working on to try and decrease the costs of operation of the hospital. We have already decreased the cost pretty dramatically. We've gone from 95 full-time equivalents down to 71 in the last couple of years. So our operation is much more lean than it has been. For the month of February, we actually made a little bit of money at the hospital. So I believe fully that we can make this work. We do need to have some more providers in the community, and we're working with the Mineral Regional Health Center to get more providers into the community on the clinic side. We'd like to see people using the clinic more because clinic visits translate into lab tests and x-rays and those kinds of things in the hospital side. We do not operate the clinics. We did not operate the clinic here when it closed. All we have is ownership of the building at the current time. So the facility is, we're working on trying to rearrange how that facility ownership is, and hopefully we will accomplish that soon. So we've got We've been working on a lot of plans, and we will make this thing work. The only thing that will keep it from working is if the federal government steps in and does their tricks again and does away with critical access hospitals or some enormous change. So,
If I can address that just a little bit further first too. Another thing we've done is worked with the board. I was elected to the board in May of 2013 and appointed chair in 2014. Been working hard to bring people with strong financial backgrounds onto the board to make sure that we're looking carefully at everything that's going on so nothing like that can happen again. I've recruited one individual who will be starting in May, who has years and years of experience as a chief financial officer for a municipality. We just brought Frank Rained on the board, who lives in the eastern end of St. Regis, the Slowway area. Frank has a lot of experience financially with bidding on large projects, etc. I've worked with Ron with the type of information that is going to the board, and we get thorough look every month at exactly where we are financially, what's trending up, what's trending down, where we need to focus our attention to make sure we don't get into that kind of situation. So we've worked on it on a couple of levels.
Okay, well, that brings up another issue. You're talking financial and so on, and that's all well and good from a business standpoint. This hospital has a bad reputation, and it has a reputation for, if not incompetence or negligence, not caring. There are a lot of incidents. I work at the post office. Post office is center of Gossip City. I have heard more stories, horror stories, about things that have happened in this hospital in the last 4 years that I have lived here, that I frankly will not go to that hospital. And I'm working with the EMS system. I'm learning to be an EMT right now. And I see this hospital, and it scares me. And I don't know if it's an atmosphere of not caring or what. So what are you doing to get rid of the dead one? The problem.
Number one, we've got a whole bunch of cards on our bulletin board in the hospital that say things like, "Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for the care that I received at your facility. It was the best care I've ever received." We had a lady at one of the meetings that we had who talked about, I came back from St. Pat's, they discharged me, I went home, I got sick again, I came to the hospital in Superior, and the care there was way better than at St. Pat's.
Sure.
So there are lots of stories for every negative story, there's a lot of positive stories that you don't hear about. There's an old saying that for every 10 positive stories, one negative story will drown it out. And so some of the things that we've done, one of the very first items on our planning is we have to change the image of the quality of the hospital, because perception is quality. I mean, it absolutely is. We're doing some things right now in our facility that we've done training of every single staff person in our facility on 2 things. The first one is called AIDIT. And AIDIT is an acronym that we use that tells us exactly how we need to treat every single patient, every single person who walks into the hospital, regardless if they're a patient, a family member, whoever. A is for acknowledge. We acknowledge that person, and if we know their name, we talk to them by name. Okay? I is for introduce. We introduce ourselves, and we make sure that we have a connection with them. We use the 10-5 rule. If you're within 10 feet, you acknowledge somebody. If you're within 5 feet, you talk to them. That's the first 2 letters. D is for duration. We talk about if you're going to have to wait for something, we want to be there making sure that you know the duration of time that it's going to take for you to get that service. E is for explanation. We want to have our staff explain exactly what's going on with you. Our nursing staff needs to be telling you what the medications are, what they're for, and the reason that you're being given them. Our radiology staff needs to lead you through what's going to happen with your CT scan. Our lab staff needs to tell you what this test is for, and what the results are trying to tell you. And then the last letter is T, and that's for thank you. And every single time, we have to be thankful for the people that bring their business to us, because we all owe our jobs to the people who come to see us, and the community we are serving by them coming to see us. The other thing we have is we are trying to live by something called the Florence Prescription. It is a book written by a gentleman by the name of Joe Ty, and it is the way we want to treat people within our organization. The Florence Prescription, the subtitle of it is From Accountability to Ownership. Everybody in our facility needs to stop treating their job like they're accountable to it, and start treating it like they're an owner of the organization. And if we don't make that conversion from accountability to ownership, then we're not doing right by ourselves, and we're not doing right by the people that we're trying to serve. We have 7 daily promises that we make. At 9 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday, if you come into our facility, you're going to see us standing in a group, making a promise to each other about how we're going to treat ourselves and how we're going to treat the people around us. Monday's promise is responsibility. It says, I will take complete responsibility for my health, my happiness, my success, and my life, and will not blame others for my problems or predicaments. Tuesday's promise is accountability. It says, I will not allow low self-esteem, self-limiting beliefs, or the negativity of others to prevent me from achieving my authentic goals and from becoming the person I am meant to be. These promises that we make to each other, what I have been telling people is you can't just read it. We're trying to get people to say these promises out loud 4 times a day, so that they convince themselves that these are the kind of people they are. And this is the kind of work that we do in our community. Sunday's promise is faith. It says, my faith and my gratitude for all that I've been blessed with will shine through in my attitudes and in my actions. We're really blessed to live in this part of the country, to live in the United States. I mean, if we could have been born in some really bad places, and we're extremely lucky to live here. We need to act like that. We need to be grateful that we live here, and that we have the opportunity to provide care to people in this county. So, yes.
Ron, I'd like to speak on behalf of the foundation and also Ron. My name is Roger Brown. Many of you folks know me, and I'm chairperson of the foundation along with Meg. I want to talk a little bit about community unity, what this community means to me and what it means to the rest of it. I want you to think about what community means. Is there a litmus test for someone from Superior coming into St. Regis? Is there a litmus test for someone from St. Regis going to Alberton or going to, let's say, Superior? I thought we were all in the same county, that there is no litmus test, and that we have a facility here that takes care of people both therapeutically on an emergency basis. And I know that I'm not the sharpest guy around. When I was going to Gonzaga, taking a Aristotelian logic course from a Jesuit priest, he had to work with me on what logic or what reason is. When someone tells you about someone else having a bad experience, wouldn't you check with the person that's having the bad experience? And if that person has a bad experience, whether it's medicine, or whether it's life, what would you do? If it's medicine, would you tell that person to go see the CEO if they have a complaint? You know, we have an ombudsman in this county, and that ombudsman is Ron. And you can go and see the CEO and state your disagreement. Now, isn't that the way we work in this community and in America? And here's another thing. At the meeting last week, it was held at the gymnasium in Superior. It was a good meeting, well attended. It happened to be one of those dark and rainy nights after the meeting. I'm not going to name this lady's name, but you're going to know who I'm talking about because many years ago, she was a hospital administrator here in this county. She greeted me. She left the facility, and a friend of hers came back saying that she had fallen. Now, she fell and injured herself. Dr. Crawford went out to attend her. Now, I found out, I'm not going to mention anything else, I don't know how many stitches, but she had to go to the ER. She had to have stitches done. Okay, it's at night. You're not 15 minutes from the facility on an emergency room basis here. You're an hour away to planes. You're going to be more than an hour away at night. You're 80 years old. You're injured. You're traumatized. You're bleeding. You could have had a compound fracture. You could have had a severed artery. Also, you could have had a concussion. I'm not a doctor like Dr. Crawford. You can speak to this. So here's the scenario, folks. Are we going to go to Kellogg? You've got an 80-year-old woman. Maybe she has an 80-year-old husband that's going to drive her. You're driving to these places. Now, what's wrong with that scenario? Everyone here is just as vulnerable. I don't care how old you are. You could be 15 years old. You could be this little baby right here that's got a fever of 102. What is this mother going to do when she has to drive this baby to Missouri to be checked out by a medical facility? So what I'm saying is, kind of let's get real here. I sat in my house today on Trestle Creek, and I read the Wall Street Journal. I read the Missoula. You know how much I pay for the Missoula a year?
Too much.
I pay $250. You know how much I paid for the Wall Street Journal? I paid $300 and some dollars for the Wall Street Journal. And I turned to my wife and I said, Jan, my God, I'm only going to be paying maybe $100 and some dollars a year for medical services. What's wrong with this picture? So all I'm saying, now I may not be necessarily right, and everybody else is entitled to an opinion. Absolutely, that's the American way. But we know what's right here. And I personally don't need the Wall Street Journal. I don't need the Missoula. I don't need another 24 golf balls. I've got plenty of them, thanks to you folks. Now I want to say one other thing about the foundation. We have had fundraisers where we have had fundraisers in the community facility right next to this one for years. We have raised over $200 and some thousand in 10 years. That wasn't Alberton alone. That wasn't Superior alone. That wasn't St. Regis alone. That wasn't Gaborgia alone. I can name restaurants who have contributed to that. I can name other people who have contributed to it. And they weren't all from Superior, or Gaborgia, or Alberton, or St. Regis. So I pray that we get our community together. I pray that our community comes together as a community and doesn't assign blame but moves on. So we can take care of our young people who are elderly, like the lady was taken care of in Superior. I hope I haven't been too vehement or too emotional, but I plan to be here for a while. And you folks are my friends. Thank you.
I want to say the gentleman from the post office, he looks to be in pretty good health right now, but when that stroke or that heart attack comes, believe me, you're not going to want anybody to be driving you over to Kellogg.
Don't get me wrong, I want this hospital to be here.
I'm just saying, we older folks need that, because
Hey,
our
I'm older
strokes are
too.
just knocking on the door.
You just look young.
I want this hospital to be here. The last thing people in this hospital. There are a number of good people in this hospital. Personally, I have seen a couple of them that I'm glad are now gone, and I'm sure a lot of people here have. I just want to make sure, and I'm getting a good vibe here. I really am. For the first time in a long time, I'm feeling better about this. I'm almost changing my mind. So,
Good.
I hope that you will give us a chance. We have some great providers. We have Dr. Gardner has been doing colonoscopies and some other hernia repair, those kinds of things. He's getting rave reviews. Dr. McClelland is doing ENT work. He lives here in St. Regis, and he's doing phenomenal work in the hospital. We have great providers across the board that can help people and do help people every single day. With the changes we're making, we want to have a complete change in attitude in our facility. We have to be a positive place where people want to come to work, where people want to be there, and the people that want to help the people that come in to receive the services. So, I know this.
One of the bad stories, and that's my mother taught school superior, taught school in St Regis years ago, and about 3 years ago, she broke her hip. We want to have a facility to go to, so I took her to Superior, which is where she always went. It was misdiagnosed. Went back another 5 days later, still misdiagnosed. I took her into Missoula, and the doctor, even without just seeing her, actually said she's got a broken hip. Well, my brother's a doctor in Dillon. He graduated from St. Regis High School, part of the community, but he's in Dillon, and he said, well, with the misdiagnosis and the quality of care, she's not going back to the county. So right now, the facilities have lost well over $200,000 in income. In Mineral County, and she would like to be in Mineral County, but she won't be. And I went to the CEO at the time, directly, talked about the quality. Kind of got rushed out pretty quick. I went to the board. I'm not shy, and so I went to the board, and it didn't seem to, nothing seemed to happen at the time. Now we're here 3 years later, and I know the staff at the hospital is great, they're friendly, they're caring people, and I'm not going to badmouth anybody that's sitting up front there because they are good people. But the quality of care has been the big question for the last 5 or 10 years, and that's what's really hurt you trying to get this money, and then with some misspending going on, people remember that quality of care. And you need people in the door, but people still remember what happened. And like I said, for me, it's a pretty direct story. I haven't been back down there myself, but I haven't had to meet. But I know one of these days, I'll probably, if anybody finds me when I drop, they'll probably want to take me to Superior. And, I'll go. But
We had a gentleman just the other day who came into the emergency room, and he was saying, I don't want to stay here.
And I know I've heard a lot of people.
And the provider convinced him that he needed to be there. I went in and talked to him. I personally went in and talked to him and said, if there's anything we could do better, what would it be? And his response was, this place is great.
Well, see, that's, I'm
People
hoping
took
we are here
exceptional
for
care of me.
years.
What his one complaint was is, you need to get rid of the carpet in all this.
I'm hoping,
And if-
this
and if
clears
I can-
up, that's the whole problem. And I think
if
that's
I can
what,
get to the point where people want to get rid of the carpet in the hospital rather than complain about something else, I'm happy. And do I want to get rid of the carpet in the hospital? Absolutely. I'd love to get rid of it. But if I can get to the point where people are, I asked them 3 questions. If there was anything that we could do differently, what would it be? Is there anything that you see that we need to be doing that could help us take better care of you? anybody in particular that we should praise for having taken exceptional care? Those are the three things I ask when I go in and talk to patients. And I'm not seeing patients very happy with the care that they're getting. So
I think, and let me just add something too. Ron told you about coming here to hunt when he was young. What he didn't tell you is the whole story about why he's here today. And I think you've probably seen enough of him by now that you've got a picture that this is a guy who really does know what he's doing and is prepared to do a good job of making this hospital work. So the question is he going to stay? And the answer to that, I'm very confident, is yes. Ron had another job, and he left that job to come here because his parents are still in Ronan. He wanted to be here as opposed to over in the eastern part of the state. I think he's got a long-term commitment to being here and working with us. I think he's doing a great job already. I can see as a board member a huge difference in the kind of information I'm getting as to what's going on a financial level and on a clinical level. We are turning the corner, and we just need a little bit of help to stay there. The other thing, and I know we do hear about bad stories. One thing you have to remember about bad stories, and obviously Denley has one that's clearly a bad story, that when you end up in a hospital, it's because you're sick or hurt. That's always a bad experience. And if you don't fix me and send me home in 6 hours, I'm kind of thinking things aren't going well because I just want to go right back to the way my life is. So some bad stories are just because things are worse than
Well, the
they
worst
can.
part was the response after.
Well, yeah, and I understand that, and you're right, and I can guarantee you wouldn't get that kind of response now. And I invite any of you to come to our board meetings. We meet the first Thursday at 8 every month. Come watch. Come pay attention to what we're doing. It really has changed. The other thing I mentioned before, a couple of people I brought onto the board, if you have some tools to help us and want to get involved, get involved. We can use good people on the board as well. We had 3 positions open for this coming May election. There were 2 petitions filed. There would have been a third, except somebody who was going to run again just had some last-minute health problems and didn't get them in. But they're just 3. There was no competition for those seats. One was mine. One was the individual that I recruited, the person I mentioned earlier, who was the financial background. And so if you want to change it, if you want to have more input, please come. We're talking right now about creating an alternate position on the board in our bylaws so that we can have an extra person in who's learning the ropes of being a board member, so that if somebody leaves for whatever reason, there's somebody right there to step right in. So join us. We'd like to help. But we're committed to making this right. Ron's here for the long haul. I'm going to stay on that board for a while and work hard to make sure we're doing things right. We put some other new people on the board that are there for the long haul. And I think we're making a change.
Frank, did you have something you wanted to say? I did. I know a lot of you don't know me. I've only lived here 5 years in St. Regis full-time. We've been in and out of the area and love to hunt and fish and, outdoor here for 20 years. But I personally have been involved in the last 15 years with 80 emergency room in different hospitals around the country. And of those 80, they were at places like UC Davis in Sacramento, they were at University of Washington, they were at Stanford Medical, they were at NIH, they were at Providence and Mercy Hospitals. And all I can say after 80 experiences is you don't know what you have here. Going to a big city hospital where the emergency rooms are crammed, you wait 2 and 3 hours in a room filled with gangbangers who have been stabbed and shot, And they get preference because they're bleeding over you. You get instant care here. They do the best they possibly can with what they have. We are not a highly technical hospital. We don't have a lot of advanced equipment, but we can get there. But what I'm saying is you're getting the best possible offering that's available to you. And it's the people in your own community. So I hope you take advantage of
I was
this.
talking to somebody the other day who said they had a 6-hour wait in the emergency room in Missoula.
I have one more thought about it. 2 times about that. My mother had dementia and was in the hospital down there. She died because of dehydration, because they didn't give her any water. I broke my neck, and they took me down there. They didn't x-ray me. When the hot helicopter came to take me to Missoula, they couldn't find the board. They finally rummaged around out in the hospital in the helicopter to find the board. That's how ready to go to that hospital is now.
Okay, and when was that?
10 years.
10 years ago. Wow.
2006.
2006. Wow.
Unlike Steve over here, I'm not on the verge of changing my mind. And earlier, to Rick's point about the emergency room, why can't we, or you, make it a really good ER department, a trauma center? Because you ship them anyway, the strokes, the cardiacs, the traumas, the EMS, lots of those have to be shipped. You can't handle them. Make a first-class ER room out of that and forget some of this other stuff. Just like he said, he should have died that night.
That's not the way medicine operates today, not even close.
Why not? I mean, that's
Because
logical.
nobody can afford the medical malpractice insurance to operate that kind of an organization. You have to get people to specialists. We don't have the money to recruit specialists. If you're going to have a specialist, you have to have a neurologist to take care of somebody with stroke. You have to have a cardiologist on hand to take some care of somebody with a heart attack. You need a trauma surgeon to take care of people with
No.
all of those.
You're missing.
Otherwise, you can't keep them here.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying stabilize them in a really good ER department that could find a backboard to ship him on the helicopter. A really first-class ER, not with all that other stuff, because they go to Missoula or Seattle or someplace, Salt Lake anyway, lots of the times. And when he said he could get to planes in 15 minutes, he meant in 15 minutes additional to the 15 minutes that it takes to go to Superior. He didn't mean 15 minutes to planes.
But you'll be in Albert and you'll be in.
I'll let one of our emergency room providers speak right now.
I apologize to those of you that have had bad experiences in the past. My name is Karen Thornton. I'm one of the PAs that work at the hospital here. And I'll tell you, when I first moved here from out of state, I had a big time culture shock. I came from a 542-bed hospital and had the best of the best and everything. And I came here and I started practicing, and I was shocked. How do providers take care of patients when they don't have a cardiologist, when they don't have a CAT scan, when they don't have an MRI, and they don't have certain medications because it costs too much for the hospital to cover? And it was huge for myself to make that adjustment to working in a place where you had to be financially responsible and decide what you were going to have that was going to make a difference in who lives and who dies. I remember interviewing at a small hospital that didn't have a surgeon, not unlike us some days. And I said, well, what do I do when I get that kid in the middle of the night with appendicitis and has to have it out emergently, and the helicopters can't fly, and the kid needs surgery? Well, you put him in an ambulance, send him down the road, and you pray. So you get to that point, and then you realize that there's two things that work in this hospital. And those two things are, one, we pick and choose the things that make the biggest difference. trade, the labs, the things that really make a difference. And we have those things here. And I wouldn't practice here if we didn't. The other thing we have here that we don't have elsewhere is compassion. And when I hear you guys talk about, attitude changes and adjustments, I've been here for 5 years. One of the things that attracted me to coming here, and one of the things that keeps me here, despite the fact that there's other places that would hire me that have everything, there's other places that will pay me more money. One of the things that keeps me here is the compassion that has always been here in the 5 years that I've been here. I have worked in small hospitals and I have worked in big hospitals. And I have worked in small hospitals that want to pretend that they're big hospitals. And what happens when you're that small hospital pretending you're a big hospital is you develop a lot of rules. And some of those rules don't make sense. So when we have a patient that comes into the emergency department that all of a sudden doesn't have a ride home, and I see one of our staff members give them a ride home, and I think in my mind, that never would have been allowed in a big hospital, because what if something happened and they crashed on the way home? Whose liability would it be? And all the things that I shouldn't say run for your ears. We worry about the liability and the safety of our people. And, the ambulance personnel that goes home to lock the house for somebody. The personnel that go to let somebody's dog out. The pets that are allowed to visit in the hospital. The things that we do to make a small hospital still part of the community, it's amazing. You don't get that anyplace. At the same time, will we make errors? Yeah, we will. Why? Because we do have those limitations. We don't have the specialists. We don't have that, how many slash scanner are there now, Chris? We don't have a full-time pathologist. There's a lot of things we don't have. So will we make mistakes? I'm sure I have. I like to think I always act in the best possible way with all of the knowledge that I can possibly have for everybody I take care of. But sooner or later, I'm sure I will make a mistake. I hope it takes somebody a long time to find it, but I'm sure I will. And I just want to say that I think you guys have a good thing going here. And even though, we can't provide the best of the best in everything, we do good care. We stabilize patients well. And again, I will tell you, the national average to be seen in the emergency department is 6 hours. So when people are seen within 20 minutes, taken care of, I think that's amazing. And I could get on a whole bandwagon about what would happen if we lose a hospital, to the levies that would have to be developed in order for you to have advanced life support EMS coverage, to be able to keep people alive from here in the middle. That's a whole other discussion.
Yes.
I'd like clarification, but I want to get away from this emotional stuff. I too had personal experiences with the hospital, but, my loved one came through, and only thanks to KT and Dr. Pepper and all the staff. But what I'm interested in is the financial, because we're here for financial reasons. So I need some clarification. Okay, 47 meals is what you're asking.
49.
49, so how many do you already get as a hospital?
30.
So that's gonna be 70, what?
For 2 years.
And so the 30 generates 300,000 a year?
Correct.
And what is that?
Pardon?
What is that used for?
Right now, it's being used to pay for people's salaries.
Just to keep going
Right.
on? Okay,
The last one we got, we used $100,000 of it to pay back Medicare for money they wanted back from, based on the cost report that we filed.
Okay. And then you broke down the debt in increments. What's the total on that?
The total debt is about $2.4 million.
Okay, so a 2-year levy is only gonna generate about 900,000?
Correct.
But you're still gonna owe another,
Right.
So you're
And
gonna come
lots of
back again
businesses,
and
lots
ask.
of businesses owe debt.
Yeah, but you'll come back again and ask
No.
for another.
No.
Can't do that, or,
Won't do that.
You think you'll be able to pay off the other million?
Correct.
Somehow? Okay, but you think you'll be generating
Correct.
more income? Okay. And then the last thing, do you have any recourse on this medical records thing? I mean, I would think if our hospital has had problems, any hospital that has that program has had problems.
Yeah. Some of it was self-inflicted. Some of it was.
What does that mean?
Some of it was, well, we can't do that. We don't want to live with this EHR. We don't want to get the education necessary to make it work. Some of that was there. There's no doubt about it. But the bigger problem was that the system was.
I'd be one of those, because I'm not very technological.
The bigger problem was that NextGen was originally a medical clinic software. So when it was put into our medical clinic here, the clinic software works great. But what NextGen decided is that they needed to get into the hospital business as well. So they bought a software package that was unproven and went out and sold it.
And then you're into a contract,
Yeah,
evidently until 2018.
Right, and the way that we organize this in a way that it's very difficult for us, or should I say, according to the attorneys, impossible for us to get out of. Because what we did is we said to NextGen, okay, we'll buy your software. And we went to a leasing company and we said, you guys pay NextGen. And NextGen will give us the software, and then we'll owe the money to the leasing company. So at this point, the leasing company could care less whether NextGen works or not. They just want to. So we're paying $15,000 a month to a leasing company for the NextGen system. And we have.
So you've investigated trying to.
Oh, yeah.
One thing that we were able to do, I just recently had some discussions with NextGen. We purchased something called Star Garden. It's their payroll software, and we've never used it since we purchased it. So I said, why did we pay you for this? We're never going to use it. It's got terrible reviews. We're not going to use it in the future. I want two things. I want my money back for the purchase of that, and I want you to decrease the amount we have in maintenance costs to pull that out. They have agreed so far to give us our money back. As soon as they agree to decrease our maintenance costs by, I think it's $630 a month, then I'm going to ask them to give us a refund back to when we started paying them maintenance on this program, because we never had used it. So we are doing those kinds of things to try and get some of the money back. Some of it's not, we're not going to get it back. But, yes, sir.
Are you raising any fees?
We have not raised what we did raise the long-term care rates. We're still lower than anybody around us.
Well, what I'm getting at, I just made a rough figure. You're asking me to pay 8.5% higher taxes. So maybe raising rates for the patients that actually go.
Yeah, what we're going to do is, we haven't had a study done of where to raise our rates. The sad reality is that the way we get paid from a Medicare program and a Medicaid program, it has nothing to do with how much we charge. They're going to pay us not based on what we charge, but based on what it costs us, or based on a flat fee schedule. They don't care what it costs us. So in order to generate any profitability or any extra money, we have to look and find where Medicare and Medicaid are not our primary payers. So if I'm just going to throw something out there, if in the X-ray department, our Medicare and Medicaid percentage are 35%, and 65% of our payments are coming from insurance companies, that's where we're going to raise our prices, as opposed to in acute care where 85% of my patients are Medicare patients. So we have to be careful about where we're doing it. I don't like to do that because it's called cost shifting. And every facility in the country is having to do it. We're having to in order to pay for what Medicare is not paying us, pay for what Medicaid's not paying us, pay for all of the bad debts, we have to raise prices to the insurance companies. Then they turn around and pay us more, and then they turn around and raise your insurance rates.
But you are asking us to say more.
Yes. So.
Yeah, we're doing that.
So, yeah,
We are doing it. One of the other issues with the next gen is only recently have we been getting the kind of numbers we need to be able to do those evaluations and start doing that. And we're now doing a department by, we're just starting, but a department by department examination. Each service we provide, how much is it costing us, what's it bringing in, where's the revenue coming from, is this something we can adjust?
and
So-
I have something that I just recently pasted on my wall that says, here's the departments that every department, what the Medicare percentage is. Because when I raise prices in something that is high Medicare, I'm not gonna see it down. I'm only gonna see money where if I raise prices in those areas that insurance companies or private patients are actually going to pay based on our charges. And we have lots of contracts, we renegotiated our Blue Cross contract, they were paying us 90% of our charges, now they're paying us 95% of our charges. They're gonna pay us a little bit more, but in the end, what's gonna happen? We're gonna see some increases in insurance rates again, but that's the game we have to play in order to cover some of those bad debts. We average $500,000 to $600,000 a year in bad debts, just people simply not paying us. We also average more than $100,000 a year in charity care. If we could get people to fill out the charity care forms, we probably have a much higher percentage of charity care and much lower bad debts. But people are reluctant to fill out those charity care applications. So, yes, sir.
Is sequestration going to affect us anyway?
Sequestration does impact us. Currently, the way that critical access hospitals are paid, we're supposed to get 101% of Medicare's definition of cost, which is not really cost, but it's, we're supposed to get 101% of that. Because of sequestration, we get 2% taken off the top. So we get 99% of cost, and the proposed budget from the White House is a proposal to lower the initial amount to 99%, which then would mean we get 97%. So another big issue that's out there is the Medicaid expansion. And that again is an issue of cost sharing, because the people who don't have Medicaid or some other form of insurance, we're writing off a lot of money for them. So what do we have to do in order to make that up? We have to raise our prices so the insurance companies pay us more, so the insurance companies charge more, and it comes right back to you guys paying for all of that debts. So Medicaid expansion will help that issue. And so that just passed the House 2821, Medicaid expansion, or the Senate. It's headed over to the House. If the House will pass it, then the governor will sign. That's a big issue for really low income, high employment counties. Yes? Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
One of the things I'd like to do is invite any of you who are interested to join the foundation. We meet the second Monday of the month at noon. We can always use more people who are interested in ensuring that we have the very best of equipment in the hospital, and we're definitely interested in raising money. So if you're interested in joining us, make sure that we have what we need in the ER and in all the clinics and everything else. Please feel free to join us.
And you're going to be seeing a lot more of me and a lot more of people at the hospital. We're going to be much more involved in the community than we have been in the past. The foundation has agreed to help the hospital, and all of the money that comes from this will go back to the foundation. We're going to have a booth at the county fair. We're going to try and get we got a health fair on May 30th that hopefully all of you will take part in. And we'll hopefully have 30 plus vendors like we've had in the past at the health fair. You can learn a lot about what's going on in healthcare.
May I say a word, please?
Sure. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you. I was putting my back to you before.
I've lived in St. Regis for 40 years. I've been in the hospital many times. And tax claims, there's always something that somebody's going to grab about. And to me, Dr. Park is one of the best doctors I ever saw. We've got some people here tonight that have been in the hospital for years, and I love every one of them. So think twice before you let this hospital go. And as I say, I suppose it's been 30 years since I started going to this hospital. I'm 92 years old now, and I'm still alive.
Thank you very much, Dr. Terry. Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you very much for spending your evening listening to me babble on. I very much appreciate it, and should you feel inclined, I would very much appreciate your support for the